Avengers Infinity War premiered this past weekend, and it's left people pretty shaken up. If you've seen the movie, the ending, and perhaps the whole plot, may have been a bit of a shocker. Thanos felt like the protagonist, with the Avengers acting more so as supporting characters, having been already fully introduced and developed in the previous MCU films. And, mega spoiler alert, Infinity War ended on a major cliffhanger. The villain emerged victorious, and half of our heroes were turned to dust, ceasing to exist. So, what does it all mean? What was with Thanos just kinda chillin' at the end? And what does this mean for the future of the MCU? Well, today we will be exploring all of these questions and more with our video on Avengers Infinity War Ending Explained. And of course, this video is rotten with spoilers. You've been warned. Well, to start off, let's just debrief about what went down at the end of the film. Thanos, after accumulating all of the Infinity Stones, snaps his fingers, and wipes out half of all existing life in the universe in an epic showing of his new power. It's the darkest thing that we've ever seen happen in an MCU film. They also put the DCEU to shame a little bit in the dark and gritty department. Sorry, Soups. Anywho, after Thanos snaps his fingers, he goes inside of the Soul Gem, to a place which in the comics is called Soul World, a place where Adam Warlock tends to inhabit. Thanos then comes across a tiny Gamora. They have a conversation. She asks him, "Did you do it? And what did it cost?" To which he responds, "Everything." It's a crushing exchange between father and daughter that exhibits so much more about Thanos and his capability to love and hurt than other comic villains that we've seen on the big screen so far. Now in the comics, Thanos' actions are motivated out of his love for death, an entity who, at a young age, due to Thanos' disfiguration, she sought out. He fell in love with her, and in order to bring balance back to the universe between the amount of living beings and dead ones, he sets out to prove his worth to her by gathering the Infinity Gems. While his motivations in the film don't seem to really have the same kinds of roots as they do in the comics, this could be a factor that comes into play later. Death was not mentioned in the movie at all, and she's such a huge part of his backstory, which is actually pretty tragic itself. Back to the plot. So, Thanos wakes up after his detour into the Soul Gem to discover that the gauntlet is all burnt up. This is when he encounters Thor. He throws Stormbreaker at Thanos in an attempt to slay him, lands right in his chest. But this doesn't stop the Mad Titan. He looks to Thor and says, "You should have aimed for my head," and creates a teleport and disappears. So let's jump back for a sec. The gauntlet is all messed up. This is never fully explained in the film, let alone what consequences this may have. But considering that Thanos uses the Space Stone to teleport away from Thor, the gems still seem to be in working condition, and it would probably be safe to speculate that the physical gauntlet itself just couldn't sustain the kind of stress that Thanos put it through when he eliminated half of all light. I mean, kind of a big task. The film then cuts back to Earth, where we witness many of our favorite heroes and other living beings beginning to disintegrate into dust. There are some pretty tragic moments, like the final exchange between Bucky and Captain America, and the one between Spider-Man and Iron Man. Spider-Man, in case you were wondering, had his Spidey sense kick in, and how he knew something bad was about to happen to him compared to all of the other heroes who turned to dust. Gotta say, the MCU has the best depiction of Parker's Spidey sense that we've seen to date. After the painful montage of characters fading to dust occurs, the film returns to Thanos, who is on a farm. He walks outside, sits, and watches the sunrise. Then it cuts to black. The title card comes up, and it too turns to dust. And everyone in the theater was like, is this really the end? Well, friends, yes it was, but only to the film, not the entire story. So let's break down that last scene. For starters, the moment with Thanos sitting on his farm and watching the sunrise is taken directly from the comics, specifically the Infinity Gauntlet 1992 miniseries. But here's the thing, in the comics, this moment happens after Thanos has been defeated. The snap was also taken directly from that comic too. In Infinity Gauntlet, a character who has yet to show up in the MCU is the protagonist who leads the assault against Thanos, Adam Warlock. Warlock's character finds out from the Silver Surfer, who is also absent because of the whole rights debacle, of Thanos' threat, and rallies all of the heroes including the Avengers and the X-Men together to take down the Mad Titan. He also convinces many celestial entities to get in on the battle, whom Thanos easily defeats, being the ultimate omnipotent being with the gems in his possession, which, by the way, it's gems in the comics, stones in the movies. After Thanos thinks he's won the battle, Nebula, who he had previously captured and tortured in the comic, sees a window of opportunity. She grabs the gauntlet from Thanos after he goes into stasis, thinking that he's been victorious and no other threats exist. She begins to use it. This causes her to send Thanos and his lady friend Terexia into space to die, but Warlock, Silver Surfer, and Doctor Strange save him, and Warlock looks into Thanos' soul and discovers that Thanos never really thought that he was worthy of all that power after all, or of Death's affection, which then convinces Thanos to help them retrieve the gauntlet from Nebula. They do, and Thanos retires to a life of farming, and the series ends with him watching the sunrise. That's not the end of the story either though. There's two other parts to the miniseries that followed it up starting in 1993, both of which very much involve Thanos. But who knows if those arcs will ever pertain to the MCU. Speaking of, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Is this the end for the Avengers? What will happen in the Avengers 4? And what does this mean for all of the MCU films that are set to be released in the near future? Well, let's start by looking back at one of the moments in Infinity War. Prior to Thanos going to Earth to seek out the Mind Stone, he has an encounter with a few members of the Avengers and the Guardians on his homeworld, Titan, over the Time Stone. This includes Iron Man, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Star-Lord, Drax, and Mantis. Doctor Strange, in order to save Iron Man's life, gives up the Time Stone to Thanos willingly. Prior to this, Strange revealed that he looked into the future, and only saw 1 out of 14 million possible futures where the good guys won this battle. Later, when Tony objects to Strange giving Thanos the Time Stone, he essentially tells Tony that this battle isn't the endgame, and that the only way for them to win in the long run is to lose this fight. So what did Doctor Strange see? This is perhaps the most promising plot point for the future of the Avengers and the Guardians, and every other living thing in that universe. Strange does get dusted along with everyone else on Titan minus Iron Man and Nebula. Nebula still existing is pretty promising as well, considering what went down in the comics. So what does all of that mean? Well, there are a few possibilities for how things will pan out. First off, there's the hint to Adam Warlock. Remember the post-credit scene in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2? It seems likely that he'll be making an appearance in the next Guardians film, and it's already been hinted that we'll be seeing brand new Guardians appearing pretty darn soon. Volume 3 is supposed to be the last time that we see this group together, but even that's questionable now that everyone but Rocket and Nebula were dusted. Does this mean that the film will follow Warlock if the character appears prior to or in Avengers 4? And will Warlock rally the troops against Thanos like he did in the comics? Also, will Thanos have a similar demise? The character in the comics is notorious for being defeated by himself. His own self-doubt and insecurities constantly undermine him, and his motivations behind his quest haven't been entirely fleshed out either in the films. Perhaps he could realize that his vanity got the best of him, like he states in the panel prior to the panel of him watching the sunrise in the comics. Ultimately, it's safe to assume that someone will rise up to challenge Thanos, and it's very likely that we may see at least the makings of that in the next few films, if not Avengers 4. Also, where does Captain Marvel play into this? That whole post-credit scene in Infinity War was pretty much just about her, but I'm sure we'll find out in her film that comes out after Ant-Man's film and right before Avengers 4. Since Avengers 4 is set to be the end of Phase 3, it is possible that the conflict with Thanos will be resolved, or it will mean that the shape of the MCU will forever be changed moving into Phase 4, with the possibility of some of the MCU characters returning down the line. And what's Doctor Strange's ultimate plan? The character is a massive part of the comics, so it's safe to presume that at some point we will be seeing him again. There are also a handful of loose ends to discuss that could have an impact on how things pan out. For starters, people are wondering what will happen with the Black Panther and Spider-Man sequels set to come out. Set for Phase 4, it definitely means that we'll be seeing these familiar characters again. It also seems like a bad financial choice for Disney and Marvel to introduce new characters to pick up these mantles, so expect to see the same T'Challa and Peter Parker return. This means that somehow at least some of the dusted characters will be reappearing by some means. Speaking of the films, Ant-Man and the Wasp is scheduled to come out next in July, in between Infinity War and Captain Marvel. Known for usually being more on the comedic side and the hints that this film may feel a little bit more rom-com than other Marvel movies, fans have speculated that its timeline will take place right before or during Infinity War, with the possibility of either of the characters being dusted. Ant-Man was mentioned as being under house arrest in the movie, and didn't make an appearance. Neither did Hawkeye, who has already been seen on set for Avengers 4, wearing a costume that looks a whole hell of a lot like the Ronin costume that Clint Barton wears in the comics. Valkyrie was also absent in the film. This is likely because Infinity War began development and production prior to the release and success of Thor Ragnarok, and Marvel didn't anticipate the character's popularity. So it seems likely that even though we didn't see Valkyrie's death in the film, Tessa Thompson still stands a chance of being a character who could pop up in the upcoming films as one of the last remaining heroes. And last but not least, how will Infinity War affect the Defenders from Marvel's Netflix series? We already know that the films make a significant impact on the shows, so will some of them get dusted? I mean, my money's on Iron Fist. Kind of an easy way to get rid of him. No one likes him that much. Alright, there we have it guys. That's a whole lot to digest, but it's also really exciting. Do you guys have any fan theories that you think we should know about? And what do you guys make of all those loose ends that we mentioned? Let us know by giving us a shout in the comments below. Now if you guys want to learn more about Thanos, check out our list on the top 10 Thanos facts. We also have 3 parts of our Infinity War Easter egg list that touches on all comic references and hidden and obvious Easter eggs that appear in the film. In the meantime though, thanks for watching everybody. I'll see you all in the next video.